Hello and welcome to Comic Book Talk with Andre for the Lunchbox. Today I'm joined with two creators of the Cauldron magazine. First up is the artist, Shane and Sam, one of the publishers and writers, correct?
Yes.
All right, welcome to the show, guys. What can you tell us a little bit about Cauldron?
Cauldron is the comics magazine of supernatural tales.
All right, so it's kind of a sci-fi and fantasy
Well,
genre?
the great thing is by saying, because we want to give creators as much leeway as possible to do their thing. So supernatural tales is a huge catch-all, essentially. But yeah, fantasy, sci-fi, horror.
Nice.
Yeah, basically genres.
Anything but kind of the superhero.
That's fairly accurate.
All right.
That's fairly, or romance or.
Well, you could have some
opera.
horror romance
yes,
or something.
as long as there's elements of genre such as fantasy, science fiction, or horror.
Great. And how did this book come about?
Yeah, so myself, Sam, and our other co-publisher, Ricky Lima, we were having a meeting, and we always see a lot of these other anthologies we're friendly with a lot of them, but we have opinions about how they should be doing their books. So we decided to sort of take a leap and do our version of it and see if we actually know what we're talking about. And we did sort of like a smaller book. It's not a 200-page book. It's about, somewhere between 30 to 50 pages. And it's, 3 or 4 short stories. And we kind of model it after, like, we're all influenced by Heavy Metal magazine or the Creepy and the Eerie magazines. And so it's oversized, it's a bit bigger, and it's just sort of like tales of, like horror and fantasy. And we each kind of break it down and have our own little sections in the book.
We're basically fans. We're fans of those old school magazines. Do you remember these? From the 70s and 80s, as Shane said. Creepy, Eerie, Vampirella, Heavy Metal, Epic Illustrated, Savage Sword of Conan.
One of my favorites.
And but they don't necessarily, they're still kind of around, but there's not as many of them as there used to be. And so the other thing is, because they were larger format, it really showcases the art. So the two influences are, and the other thing is, because they were magazines, they all skipped the Comics Code. And we know the Comics Code was the thing in the 50s that had sort of limited content in terms of the stories you could tell. So Warren and Heavy Metal and all these other magazines, even Mad Magazine, became a magazine in order to avoid the code. And then as kids, Shane always mentions this, we all discover this mature content a little too early. It could be an older brother or a cousin or, a friend who's, a teenager or whatever, and you somehow get a hold of these magazines, and it blows your mind. It just melts your brain. And of course, Heavy Metal often had European comics and artists, and of course, the Europeans all had large format. I'm probably not pronouncing this correctly, bande dessinée, the French hardcover albums that Heavy Metal would reproduce, and they were beautifully reproduced on slick, glossy paper. That's the feel that we were going for. But so it appears retro, but it's also got a real contemporary feel to it.
Well,
that was the other
it
important
definitely
thing.
does, because I noticed right away, like you said, it's the large format, but it's also full color, which is fantastic. And the nice thing about the anthology is that you have such a nice wide variety of artists. So that's kind of a perfect segue for my next question. How did you get so many diverse creators to line up for stories for your book?
Well, so the first issue, we basically broke it down to there's going to be 3 editors, and we were all, a lot of us are writing our own stories. So we had 3 stories. Each of us did our own. Sam worked with Robert Freeman on a kaiju story. That's what they want. And Ricky Lima worked with Casey Parsons on a, how do you call it, like a witch Macbeth type story?
Yeah, heavily influenced by Macbeth. There's a little bit of twist ending about Satan showing up. Beautifully painted as well, Casey.
And I wanted to write and draw my own sort of Conan-esque type story. So we just mostly, for this issue, the first issue, we just worked with guys we knew and we liked, and guys who we knew would get it done. And, just like friends of ours. And then for the second issue, it's sort of just grown on that, where we've expanded into 4 stories. We have 4 editors now, where we've taken Casey Parsons on, and we all just sort of, we're working with guys we really know and really like their work. So it's a lot of them are just like local guys.
So basically, it's almost like you're putting a band together, but these are your boys. These are the people
Yes,
that you can
right.
trust,
Like-minded
and you
individuals.
like them, right? That's awesome. So you've already mentioned a lot about your influences and kind of your inspiration. So I'd like to know from you, in particular, Shane, what are some of your artistic influences? Like who do you like to follow comic book wise in the art realm?
That's there's honestly, I could give you a list of like hundreds of names of guys that are, but like some of my biggest influence, my favorite is Frank Whiteley, guys like Joe Madureira, I think you pronounce his name, Dale Keown, Sam Keith, a lot of these guys. But for the Cauldron stuff, my Conan story, I looked back at a lot of like the Kerry Nord Conan stuff, the Mike Mignola stuff. That's a big one for me. I was trying to do. I don't think I look like I'm doing Mignola style, but I think a lot about Mike Mignola when I'm doing my work too. But there's so many names, it's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so what do you guys think sets Cauldron apart from other anthologies? You mentioned that one of your inspirations was that you criticized some of the other ones that you've witnessed and seen over the years. So what sets yours apart?
I think it's just a tighter focus on the genres. And again, it's as broad as possible, but it's a certain attitude as well. I like to say it does have a huge retro influence because we all love like the classic Frazettas and Richard Corbins and all the stuff that the European artists and creators that we saw quite young. But for example, in Shane's story, even though it is a barbarian, there's a real contemporary feel to it. He's found a twist on the genre that a contemporary reader could recognize as fresh yet familiar at the same time. In my story, in Volume 1, we're doing a kaiju story, but I just didn't want to tell a monster story. I wanted to tell an eco-fable as well and find that sort of twist. So the twist is essentially that this is a kaiju in steampunk Tokyo.
Wow.
Which is, again, a different kind of flavor than a normal, contemporary or 20th century set kaiju story. And again, it has a lot to do with industrialization, and it's very relevant to today, although even we've put it in that sort of medieval Japanese background.
And it's super original. So I think that's one of the things I noticed about the book is that the stories were all not only beautiful, but each one was very unique. And Shane, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, so I'm going to ask you, in your story, it was called The Monks of
Ral Vupaka.
Okay, yes, I'm glad I didn't even try that. But so you had a very cool story which didn't end like I thought, and maybe it'd be a little bit of spoilers here, but it starts off as your typical damsel in distress story, but then it's almost like the damsel ends up saving the hero. Was that? Am I right with that kind of interpretation?
Kind of. That's like sort of. I think that's one way to interpret it. But my thing was, we always try to find a different take on. I mean, like you have a certain amount of stories that have been told, and it's like, how do you sort of reinvent them, right? And so for me, it was starts off with the damsel in distress and your barbarian king, and it ends with. For me, it wasn't so much as she's saving him, but more that he can't save her because she's already sort of made her deal with the devil. So no matter what he tries, it's futile, and he sort of just has to get the hell out of there.
So it's kind of like she's ready to pay the price or the consequence for her action.
Yeah, she sealed her fate, and there's no point. You can't save her at this point.
Well, that is a very good segue, I think, into this next question, because I think there's a bright future in store for Cauldron. So what do we know that you've got coming down the line?
Volume 2. Our second issue, which we're calling Cauldron Spring 2019, because it's a magazine, we don't want to do the typical issue 1, issue 2, because there's completists out there versus a periodical. So it just comes out and you can pick up, and because it's an anthology, there's no continuing stories, you can pick up any issue.
Yeah.
And we fund on Kickstarter twice a year right now, and they've been a runaway success. We funded within 24 hours. With our first volume last year, and then our recent campaign for the second volume, funded in 8 hours.
Wow.
So there's
So you've
a lot of
built quite a
momentum.
following.
Yeah, and it's a surprise to us too, because we didn't realize that there's a hunger for this kind of content, something that's a little different, something that actually we're writing for ourselves, right? And what we love is something that genuinely surprises you. I always like stories that I'm not able to predict where they're going. Not to say that they're not structured and very tight and very well plotted and planned, but just that's the attitude. Again, we've been talking about this sort of ethereal attitude that the band brings to the table, and I think that's probably the best way to describe it. We all surprise ourselves, and we all surprise each other in all the stories. And this is the great thing about a cooperative publishing model like this. We all bring each of our stories to the table, and we're all fans and friends of each other. And
So the issue 2 will be debuting at the March Comic Con 2019. We will also be at TCAF this year, 2019.
the Toronto Comics Arts Festival.
Toronto Comics Arts Festival, if people don't know what that is. We'll be at Fan Expo as well, which what we believe will be, if the timing goes everything right, we'll have the 3rd issue of that, which will be the fall 2019 issue. But yeah, so we have a bunch of stuff lined up for the upcoming con season.
And, and volume 2 is even bigger and better. We've jumped from 32 pages to 48 pages, and we're shocked at the amount of creators that have come on board our crazy train here. The cover, you can see back there, the Knight in Purple is by Adam Gorham, best known for Marvel's Rocket Raccoon, New Mutants. He's drawn Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, he's generously taken the time out to give us an amazing cover.
That's fantastic. Well, I think it shows that you guys are attracting quality because you're putting in quality. So let's tell everybody out there where they can find more information about Cauldron.
Yeah, so if you go to, I believe it's cauldronmagazine.com, that's our website, which should be up and running, where you can buy it as like an online store to buy the book. And then generally, if most of the time, our goal is going to be doing Kickstarters for each issue. So if you look up Cauldron Magazine on Kickstarter, you'll find the past campaigns, and there'll always be sort of an upcoming one.
And we're also Cauldron Magazine on Facebook, so very easy to find.
Yeah.
Just type in Cauldron Magazine, and it'll take you to the different places online that we can be found.
Well, that's great. Listen, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Shane and Sam.
Thank
All
you,
the
Andre.
best for the next issue. I know I'm looking forward to it. Well, thanks for tuning in. This has been Comic Book Talk on the Lunchbox. Make sure you check us out on all the socials, and you can get all the information on Cauldron with this fantastic book and this great group of guys. We got Shane and we got Sam.